In this lesson, we're going to look at another filter, and that filter is going to allow us to make our photos a little sharper. And you're going to see that Photoshop has a number of different sharpening filters. We're just going to focus on one because it's the most recent one, the newest one they've created, and I think also the most powerful. And we're also going to combine that with some blending modes that are built into the sharpening tool. But the first thing we want to do before we do this particular filter is we want to make our layer into a smart object. And why do we want to do that? Because we want to be able to make it so it's non-destructive to the pixels. It's very important for a lot of the filters that you work with that you make it into a smart object first. So if I right click on it, you're going to see here I have convert to smart object. And you're going to know that it's a smart object because it has this little icon there. Now, when we make a filter applied to this, you're going to see that it's going to put another layer on top of it, thereby not affecting the original pixels. All right, so again, with a lot of the filters you work with, the first thing you're going to want to do is make your layer into a smart object so we do not affect the original pixels. All right, now let's go ahead and make sure this layer is selected. We're going to go over to here to our filter menu, come over here to this little sharpening section, and we're just going to choose Smart Sharpen. There's quite a bit we can work with, and you're going to see that some of these are, pretty much do the same thing that we see here, and including the unsharp mask, which is a little bit older, but we're going to focus on the Smart Sharpen. It's going to come up to a nice little dialog box, and we're going to have a nice little preview here. We can see there I am. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and just zoom out a little bit. Now, you're going to see that it's already kind of started on something. It might remember something that you've done before, okay, or it may just kind of pick something for you based off of what it expects you to do, right? Just based off of what it thinks you want. All right, now you're going to see that it is pretty subtle. Okay, so I like to work with the Smart Sharpen, and then again, I'm going to combine it with my blend mode to make it so it's going to really do what I want it to do. Okay, so we can just go ahead and bring up our amount a little bit. That's going to be the amount of the sharpening. And essentially sharpening is just looking at the edges. It's finding the edges of all of our objects, and you're increasing the sharpeningness around that. Okay, and then the radius is basically the pixels around each individual edge. How far around those edge pixels do you want it to go? All right, so you're going to see a little bit more of that. It's going to get a little bit sharper. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and bring this up to maybe just like 5 or so. Okay, and we're going to see it's very subtle. We're going to see it. I'm going to go ahead and just click OK. And you may or may not have noticed, okay, but it's gotten a little bit sharper. And let's just go ahead and just turn it off. And now you'll notice because I created this as a smart object, I now have a smart filter mask on top of this. All right, so if I click on my little eyeball here, you'll see very subtly, it just kind of added it on there, right? Not a whole lot, and sometimes that's a good thing, but you can definitely experiment with how much sharpening you want, your radius size, all that good stuff. But now I'd like to see like the main difference happens when I work with this guy right here. Okay, so you can see this right there. Okay, very small, almost kind of as if it doesn't want to be discovered. And that's going to allow us to work with the different blending modes for our sharpening filter that we've just put on there. And that's going to allow me to have a little bit more, I'd say, kind of, with the blending mode, it gives us a lot more options as far as how we want the sharpening to go. So if I double click on this now, you're going to see that a new dialog box is going to pop up. And again, we're going to go ahead and just take a look. Let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit. And now you're going to see it says mode up there, right? So the mode implies the blending mode for this particular filter. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose like dissolve, for example. And nothing happens. But then if I kind of toggle through all these, we're going to see there's another one that comes in. There's another one. I'm just using my down arrow to do that. And you're going to eventually find one that's going to work for you, right? Just kind of keep an eye on it. Not bad. That's getting better. And I kind of like that one the best. All right, now, once I've gotten to this, you'll notice here is also opacity, because if it's gotten a little bit too much, you can then bring it down a little bit, right? So let's bring it down to about 70%. And you can say, okay, it's definitely sharper, but it's not as sort of like contrasty as it was before. And that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now that's a lot better than it was before. So let's go ahead and turn that off, and you can see a dramatic difference there. Okay, and even the grass is sharper, the background is sharper, everything. Okay, now Let's say, for example, I did not want the background as sharpened, right? I actually want me to sort of like stand out a little bit more. Well, because this is a mask, this little white box right there, that's going to allow us to kind of make it so only this guy in the foreground is sharpened. All right, so how do we work with masks? So I'm just going to simply just click on this right here, not on my layer itself, but on the mask. And every time you work with a mask, it has to do with the brush painting over black or white. Currently, this is white, and then we're just going to simply paint black over that. So I'm going to go over here to my brush tool, and then notice how black is in my foreground. And now what I'm going to do is make sure that my opacity is all the way up to 100. And I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger using my right bracket key. And then I'll just use my grass since it's a little more obvious. You can see how now that's less sharp. Okay, everything else now, see, is less sharp. And I'm the only thing that's in focus right now, or a little less in focus in the background. Okay, less sharpened. Okay, so now I'm really standing out. Now let's go ahead and just kind of just really scrub this. Scrub, scrub, scrub. And let's move my layers panel out of the way. Great. You notice how the sharpening and also the blending mode, it also kind of brings out some color as well. So you get a nice little bonus there. Okay, so now if you take a look at my mask, you'll see there's black all around there, and then there's just me right there in the middle. Let's go ahead and just take a look at that. You can see, beautiful, just like that. Okay, now let me show you another way we could have done this from the beginning. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and remove this all together. I'm just going to go ahead and drag that into my trash can. All right, and now I'm back to normal. Now, I know that it's only me that I would like to actually make into a mask. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to very simply just select myself when I apply my filter. So let's now go over to here to our object selection tool, and I'm very simply just going to go ahead and highlight myself, click on that, and now I am now highlighted. That's great. And then I'm going to go ahead and make it so I'm going to have a little bit more around me. So I'm going to go back to my select, modify, and I'm just going to expand that a little bit. Maybe, sure, 13 pixels is fine. Go a little bit on the outside of me. That's great. And now, when I apply my filter of sharpening, I'll go over to here to Smart Sharpen. All right, I'll keep all those things the same exact thing. That's great. Click OK. Now you're going to notice perfectly masked already is me. Okay, I'll go ahead and just use my little blend mode option right there. And I know which one I'm going to choose again. I'm going to go over here to overlay. And you can see only me, only I get selected there and affected. So let's go ahead and bring that down a little bit. Not too shabby. Okay, so that's a nice little trick. You can always just pre-select before you do your mask. All right, so looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So the Smart Sharpen tool works really, really well. Keep it nice and simple. You could ignore all those other ones. And if you wanted to get a little bit deeper into it, just FYI, there are some kind of hidden ones here. Again, pretty subtle. Just go ahead and take a look at these here, and you can see what they do. You know, just kind of bring it down a little bit. Again, kind of subtle. They're messing with all the kind of the different sort of edges around there, all your different sharpening, okay? And it works especially a little bit more powerfully when you are working with your blend modes as well. Okay, so again, it's quite subtle depending on your object that you're working with. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get out of that, and I am ultimately pretty happy. So practice that, and we'll see you in the next lesson.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. To see the full course that this video came from, click over there. And click over there to see more videos from Simon Says It.